Testing, testing. Hey, everybody, if you're outside, you should be inside. Come on. If you want to go upstairs, it's really cool. You get like the mezzanine view.
Cool, thank you. Basking in the light.
That's right. Hugo, go herd people. Come on, everybody, get on in here. Who else can I leverage to shove people in the door? Well, there are people eating tacos.
Yeah.
There are people eating tacos. What are we going to do with the taco eaters?
I don't know. We can't shoot the gun. We can't shoot the gun until the yard is clear.
Well, those tacos are going to have to come inside then, I think. I think that's what's going to happen.
Entirely possible.
They've got 15 minutes to pack their gobs before we're going to have to shuffle them off somewhere else. Okay, so, folks, sometimes life gets you down. Sometimes it offers significant challenges to you. Sometimes things are hard. Adversity rears its head, and what do you do then, NATO? You break out the big guns. All right? Welcome to Longshot, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. So, for those of you who aren't steeped in the lore, all right? Hey, bring it in. John, you first. Come on, come closer, all right? Everybody just walk it in a little bit, all right? We got more people packing in the rear. There you go. There you go. Thank you. I think I'm probably still a little too heavy for that. I don't want to break anybody's back here. We signed waivers, but I don't know if that's going to cover. So for those of you who don't know, Longshot's a company that's about 4 years old. It was started in 2021 in my garage with some of the people who are here this evening. There we managed to kind of cobble together a friends and family round. A guy threw in 30 grand, which I literally made last for like a year and a half. We built a Mach .6 potato gun in my backyard, multi-injection potato gun, which my housemates banished me for. They were like, Mike, you have to stop. You're going to blow the neighbors in half or something. And they were right. It was incredibly reckless. Then I went on to being incredibly reckless on a boat in Alameda, actually, that a friend of, who's also here tonight, basically gave us the use of so we could continue our work in a place that was more isolated, a little bit further away. And we managed to kind of crank that system up to about Mach 1.8. For some reason, and I will not understand this ever, the Air Force thought that was interesting enough to justify a $750,000 Phase 2 SBIR. And that was a turning point for the company. So at that point, and for the record, I literally had Brendan worked for free for a year. I think that I paid myself $1,000 a month for 6 months, and we had $1,000 left in the bank when the Air Force made that award. I had to take out a personal loan for $150,000 from a friend, who shall not be named, to basically like move in here and start buying equipment and get going. Like I could have lost my house if the Air Force had decided, oh, hey, take backsies, sorry. But fortunately, that didn't happen. So that brings us into here, and this is where the company starts to get serious, where we're starting to build hardware out of metal. So fast forward, in those early days, NATO, like many technicals in the Bay Area, had a real job, so he was helping on the weekends. And then once we got that Phase 2 SBIR, he was like, okay, this is real now, it's time to go, and came in and been my, but we've been like buddies for
15 years. 15 years.
There you go, yeah. So that's kind of Longshot coming here. So we got from like Mach 0.6 in my garage, Mach 1.8 on Weird Boat in Alameda. Mach 4.3 is the 6-inch interior diameter gun that you see laid out there. That's been fired over 100 times here in Oakland. And then this big chubby guy out here, that's not really about speed. That system out there is about learning how to put the thing together and anchor it and get all that stuff right. We are going to be firing that thing tonight. Really, we just kind of tuned it to kind of like not murder anybody, but give you all a little bit of a scare. That's really what it's supposed to do. You're going to be fine. So I'm trying to think, the other thing is you've gotten kind of like the history of Longshot up to this point. I'm going to give you another talk. What's going to happen here is we're going to switch over to NATO. He's going to take over. He's going to walk you through what the engineers are doing in sort of like a filling and operation of this. You are going to obey all commands from Longshot types, so you do not get blown in half. And then that's going to happen. We're going to give you guys a little bit of time to sort of mill around, grab yourself a taco, that sort of thing. Come back in here, and then I'm going to give you the rest of the talk. And that's going to be sort of the vision of the company and what's going to happen going forward. Before I pass it off, though, I want to take a moment to do something that I think is extremely healthy, psychologically and spiritually, which is to express gratitude. Nothing about this is given, right? What's happening here is incredibly hard. The reality is this shouldn't work for a variety of reasons, right? We're trying to build a gun for throwing satellites into space, getting people to give you money, getting people to give you land, giving people to give you their time and attention to do work on it. All of these things are hard, incredibly hard. It takes a lot of storytelling, it takes a lot of persuasion, it takes a lot of patience and time, and a lot of learning. Man, I have spent a lot of time getting kicked in the teeth. So I think I want to take a second and I want to appreciate the people who make this possible. The first group of those people who I want to address are the team. Everybody here who is wearing one of these shirts has, and some people who aren't wearing one of these shirts, has made some kind of sacrifice to be able to do this. There is a premium that people pay to work on cool things. I live with a bunch of people who work at Google, and they can't stand their job, but they're rolling, right? When somebody with real technical skills, who's really awesome, comes in to work on a project like this, something that is actually beautiful, impactful, something that could change, like something that could matter in a serious way, they're making a decision to like, I am going to accept a significant part of my remuneration in glory. And without those people, this world would be a goddamned boring place. So I am really happy to the people here at Longshot and the people at all the really interesting startups and enterprises out there who are building the world that we're going to be spending the rest of our lives in, folks, the future. Thank you very much to you guys, the team.
Amen.
Okay, the other group of people who are a part of this story, like being in Silicon Valley and talking to tons of investors and getting yelled at and being said, hey, you're so dumb, I'm not going to give you money, like 350 times, that is spiritual excoriation. It is a sandblaster of the soul if you're not a complete sociopath, which is one of the advantages of being a complete sociopath. I, unfortunately, am not blessed in such a way. There is a group of people out there who effectively function to champion companies like ours. They go to people who run sovereign wealth funds, and they go to people who run pension funds, and they go to people who are like large-scale capital allocators at like these major institutions and super rich individuals, and they make the argument, to these people that this chunk of money that you are spending right now, yes, totally, that could go into another AI startup. It totally could. But what you should do with it is you should take a goddamned risk and you should put it into something that doesn't necessarily match with like the current fads right now and that could matter. They're the other side of that, and those are the investors who actually put money into interesting things. And I want to tell you, I've spoken to a lot of them, and there aren't a lot. Like, there is a small number of people out there who have a vision of the future, and they're working on it from the capital side. They're pulling money forward. Like, when I get money from a VC, that is actually part of a larger argument that's taking place, where he's already been in a fight to try and get the money to put it into startups like us. And from my perspective, like I'm sympathetic to the fight that they have to fight, right? And I think that it deserves a little bit of acknowledgement because you see like the 15th AI blockchain supported networked cold pressed juice startup raised $45 million A round, and it really makes me want to blow my brains out occasionally. But like there is a cadre of great people in this town who invest in interesting things, and they deserve their share of the glory too. And in particular, like straight up buttering up the people who were leading my round, that's Sean and Hugo at Starship, and I want to say thank you guys. So this is the technology that we have here, for the record, is under the hood out there. We're in the business of opening burst discs exactly when we want to. This burst disc is made of stainless steel, and it's about maybe an eighth of an inch thick.
Yeah, a little bit more than an eighth.
A little bit more than an eighth of an inch thick, and this thing took up to about 800 psi and held there, like right on the edge, just to make sure that it could, right? Stress test of this thing, right on the edge of failure, and it didn't. And we have to do lots of experiments like this to make sure that we know what these materials are going to do. This one, we thought it was such a cool kind of Captain America shield looking thing that we decided to mangle it by putting like Longshot loves Starship. I almost did a heart, but I decided to leave that alone. But this is going home with Sean and Hugo, and they can fight over whose bedroom it gets to go into. From a purely psychological standpoint, like being subject to the kind of like sandblaster of fundraising in Silicon Valley, every drop of faith that you get, right? The faith that you get from the team, the faith that you get from people who are willing to put their own reputations and their own capital behind it it's a buoy. It is the thing that heals. It is a salve. It is the topical analgesic that soothes me through the day as I have to go out and I have to just keep pulling and keep fighting. Thank you guys. From a financial standpoint, we couldn't do it without you. From a emotional standpoint, I couldn't do it without you. You've been a help. Thank you. All right, I want to reiterate what we're doing out here. There are things happening at high pressures. There are things happening with electricity. When these guys in these black shirts with the kind of odd logo Longshot tell you to do something, you do it or you get gone. So that's to keep you guys safe, okay? I'm going to pass it off to NATO. He's going to be emceeing from here. When we're done with the shot, there's going to be like a 10-minute break. Oh. Hold on, we got, that's for NATO, okay. He's going to walk you guys through all of this, and then NATO and I together are going to come back up afterwards, and we're going to do a brief talk and give you guys kind of the vision and what's coming in the coming year and coming years for Longshot. I saw Eris out there, I like Eris. Guys, thanks a lot for coming. The final group of people who really buoy me are the average folks who are actually interested in this. Every time somebody I'm talking to at a used car place or a bus stop says, man, that's super cool, it keeps me going, all right? Everybody who shows up here, you're taking a little bit of time out of your day because you're curious, you're interested, you got questions, you want to see it. Thank you. Your excitement, it keeps me excited.
Thanks, Mike. Teared up a little bit. I'm basically just going to be narrating the shot operations. Our team is right now getting things locked down, getting things prepped for the shot. At some point here, we'll start closing the doors, and everyone will have to be not within eye shot of the cannon. We're just going to be doing, for us, a low pressure shot. Our small gun, we run at 850 psi. This gun, we're going to be running at just 50 psi. 50 psi in that size pressure vessel, however, is still a lot of stored energy. And when it fires, if there's any dust or rocks and stuff around, it can put your eye out. So we're going to make sure that nobody has, we're not going to risk anybody's getting injured. So once we get the yard clear, we can start pressurizing things. So it looks like the team's still working on that. What we've got over here is we've got our dashboard. So we use We have a variety of sensors on the various systems out there that we use to monitor the systems while we're preparing for a shot. So on the far left is the kick pressure, the pressure in the main pressure vessel, and that will gradually rise as we fill the kick stage. We monitor the temperature as well, and those things get plotted as time goes on. We've talked a lot about burst discs. So the system to trigger the burst discs is a high voltage system, and so over here there's a couple of gauges monitoring the voltage in the burst disc rig and the charging current for the capacitor. So you'll see those numbers start to move when we when we get close to the pressure level that we're going to use for shooting.
Sean and Hugo over.
Sean, Hugo, you guys should head over to the operations area.
There was a couple of infants around.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Longshot folks are distributing we're distributing ear protection. Please wear the ear protection. If you have a small human who cannot put in the ear protection, okay, good. Please cover their ears when we get close to shot moment. We have measured the decibel level for historical shots, and it's definitely loud. It's 120 decibels inside here, so it's going to be loud. Definitely, definitely safer to have your ears covered than not.
What's full pressure?
We haven't fired this system at full pressure. The little gun out there is better insulated, so it's also in the small gun when we fired it is also in the neighborhood of 120 decibels, but that's with a lot more insulation between us and the system. The big gun has very little acoustic insulation. This one, today we're just going to be firing at 50 psi. Oh, eventually these systems will be running at 800, 850 psi, yeah. So right now we have a series of checklists that the team is running through, safety checklists to make sure that, for example, all of the hoses and fittings are connected properly. All of the electrical connections are secure and uncorroded and unbroken and things like that. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes every time we do a test shot. So I'll try and narrate as much of that as I can think of in the moment. If you have any questions, holler them out, and I'll try to address them as they come up. But this is a relatively, for us, this is a relatively simple test shot. Yes? Can you explain a burst disc? Oh, sure. Yeah, so the burst disc is basically a large membrane, in this case of metal, that is the barrier between the pressure vessel and the barrel. And so we pressurize the pressure vessel up to whatever our operational pressure is. In the small gun out there, 850 psi. For this shot, it'll just be 50 psi. And then we have a mechanism that basically pokes this balloon and pops it and releases that gas very rapidly. And that's basically the key technology that makes Longshot work, because as the projectile is moving down a barrel and we have to open a series of burst discs to let gas out behind the projectile as it goes down the barrel. The projectile's moving at Mach 5 or Mach 25. You really need to let that gas out like right as the projectile goes by in order for there to be for the projectile to feel any of the pressure on its back as it's moving. So in this case, for us, this is a relatively simple shot. We're doing one stage. We just have a kick stage. We're just popping one burst disc, and we're doing it in an actuated fashion. We're just going to push a button and pop that burst disc. We don't have a projectile that has to trigger anything. So the goal here is really just to give you guys a feel of what it feels like to be around one of these systems when they're operating. We've fired the small 6-inch gun, as we said, more than 100 times, and so the team here has gotten very used to loud booms, and for us, we sort of get inured to it. But every once in a while, we'll have a visitor over, and we'll do a shot with a visitor there, and then they get excited. And so the goal here is to just give you guys sort of a hint of that excitement. So like I say, right now I think the team is still, wrapping up all of the final checks, safety checks. Cool. Cool. Sounds like we're getting pretty close to fill time. So once everything out there is set, basically we'll start filling the pressure vessel. We have basically a 6-pack of small tanks that we're going to use to fill the big tank. And so it'll take a couple of minutes for it to drain all of the gas in there. Different gases move at different speeds. So this shot, we're just using nitrogen, which is a relatively slow gas. So it'll take a couple of minutes to fill through our plumbing. For higher speed shots, we'll often use helium. And eventually, when we're out in the desert, we'll be using hydrogen. So those gases move much faster, and they fill much faster. We've noticed definitely when we fire the 6-inch gun with nitrogen, it'll take, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to fill all of the pressure vessels out there. And when we do it with nitrogen, or it'll take 5 to 10 minutes if we do it with helium. So again, here we're just going to be doing it with air. It's a large volume, but it's relatively low pressure, so it'll probably take 5 or so minutes, 5 to 10 minutes for it to fill up once we get started. And that's sort of a hurry up and wait. There's nothing to do during that time. So I'm going to apologize for just letting the tension build when we start seeing the pressure go up. There will be one sort of like as we get up into the neighborhood. I'm not sure exactly what the. All right, sounds like we're about to start fill. Once we get the pressure up to some threshold, I don't know what that threshold is, but it'll probably be 40 or 45 psi. We'll start charging the capacitors. So what that will look like is you'll see the amperage meter will go up to like 17 milliamps or so, and the kick voltage will gradually start to rise until it gets up to the full charge, which I think is 3.5 kilovolts. So right now it's just, there's not actually any voltage in the system, it's just that's how low our voltage sensor can register.
Starting pressurizing.
You guys probably heard that. They're now starting pressurizing. Eventually. Yes. What's that? So when we eventually use hydrogen in the larger system, our goal is to have no combustion inside the gun system. The pressure vessels and barrel are, the steel thickness is sized to accommodate the pressures that we're planning on generating. And with some margin, they're not going to be designed to handle an internal explosion because that would be prohibitively expensive. Part of the advantage of our system is that it's incredibly cheap because we're doing stuff in a very simple fashion. So if we had to handle explosions, things would get a lot more complicated. So yeah, you can see the pressure level starting to rise, and you can hear the hiss of the gas going. You can see on the system pressure chart, there's a little like blue dotted line. We manually annotate our telemetry. So that's an indication that somebody basically made a manual annotation there. That was system pressurization start. I don't know if we have enough gas in one gas cylinder to fill it all the way up. If we don't, then we'll get up to some pressure threshold and we will close off that gas cylinder and open another one, and then we'll have another little annotation there that'll say, like, switched tanks to fill up to the next pressure level. But I also know we've been running the compressor, and so I think we're going to try and do it all off of one pressure vessel. We store the gas at a couple thousand psi, and then run it through a regulator down into the cylinder. 50 psi today. Yeah.
Halfway there. Charge capacitors.
Looks like the capacitors are charging. So you can see the kick amps is up at 15 milliamps, and the kick volts were up at like 1.5 kilovolts. Once the voltage gets up to 3.5 kilovolts, you'll just see the kick amps gradually drop back down as the capacitor is full. Capacitors are fully charged. Now we're just waiting to get the last little bit of gas into the pressure vessel. That drop is because basically we charge the capacitor and then we disconnect it from our monitoring system. When we actually pop the disc, there's a whole bunch of EMF that gets generated and it can damage some electronics. So we just separate the system from our monitoring tools. Yes. Yeah, we've blown up a whole bunch of sensors here in a variety of really fun and exciting ways. I think the worst one was when we had one of our burst discs failed early and some of the electrical connections contacted the barrel, which was grounded. So then the system ground for this whole facility went to 3.5 kilovolts, which isn't good for a lot of things. We lost a couple of computers and a lot of It was a good learning experience. Full pressure. Right now they're going to be doing some last second checks, and then there will be a very loud noise. They'll do a countdown. I don't know if they're going to announce it over the radio. They'll do a countdown internal.
3, 2, 1. All right, that felt good.
All right. Please hang out for just a minute. The team is going to safe the electronics, safe the pressure vessel, make sure everything is stable and cool out there, and then you can go, see the cloud of dust settling. So we use, this is 410 stainless. We have a technique that couples the electrical energy in the capacitor into the person. That's already in order. As much as I can say, really, that is the proprietary, that is the magic sauce. That is the only thing that I'm trying to have behind. Everything else I can see.
We can go out? Yeah.
Yeah, we had a bunch of things put around the perimeter to prevent it from slipping out. Yeah, these are during the pressurization process.
Oh, okay. What? Oh, really?
When we press it, there's a disc over in the that has like the fresh grease. We've already given away a couple of them to investors and advisors. So we had a couple of like scrap ones.
Okay, everybody, you can come on out. All right, feel free. Circulate. Survey the damage.
Yeah, this is actually this was from
It's better than nothing. At least we were able to get in the air a little bit. Probably making it work.
Do you have a wallet? Wallet? Wallet?
still on dining hall plans. I had to do a slice. I didn't have to worry about like cooking the last few weeks. Yeah, I'm not ready for that. Yeah, I'm not ready for that. Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. My friends would always clown me because I would always eat dining hall food. And they're like, why do you eat dining hall food? I'm like, I don't feel like cooking. You guys are, they'd always be like cooking like bringing meals. A few of them lived in LA, so like their mom would come and like bringing hot meals. And I'm like, my mom was here, man. Y'all got like home cooked meals. Y'all cooking it. Y'all got seasoning. I don't have any of that.
Hello, everyone. The first instinct is to cause issues. Daughter says I'm very immature. Why this? Oh, it works. Inside, it works inside. Why? I don't have much access to microphones. I can talk.
Yeah. PT on Thursday. You end up with
Celia, what time is it starting? You can tell me in a minute. You can tell me in a minute.
The white G wagon. Yeah. But it's funny because now they're like literally have like the rarest.
1, 2.
All right, come on. Get in here. What's a fun NATO fact? NATO built an electric car that was, I think, to basically significantly decrease its value, right?
I ruined a 68 Carmagia by cutting the range to 30 miles at 30 miles per hour.
Nice. But it wasn't electric.
Yeah, it was
Ahead of the curve. What year was that?
2008.
Take that, Elon. What's a Testing. They're working on it. Let's just, Alex, let's try and get people in.
Yeah.
Is there a dude up there with the slides? Okay, they're working on that, I bet. Okay. You tell us when you're ready, okay? All right, just use your big boy voice. What's a fun mic fact?
Wait a second. Wait.
Oh,
Okay.
that's the
Yeah. Coming by. Yeah. Well, no, we're all off tomorrow.
Testing.
Testing. Testing. This one sounds good. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're golden. Okay, fun mic fact. All right, second fun NATO fact then. NATO and I worked on a heat exchanger rocket engine that was going to use concentrated sunlight and Fresnel lenses in space to basically turn water into like dry steam, and you can actually get pretty good ISPs. But it turns into like this delicate thing where you have to be like pointed directly to the sun, and it gets really complicated. We did get a really big Fresnel lens, which is free to a good home, by the way, because my wife wants me to get rid of it. That's like a meter by meter that you can totally melt steel with. And that was like our first garage project together. All right, somebody wants a Fresnel lens meter by meter. Okay, yeah, it's basically a death ray. You can go blind real easy with one of those. Yeah. Other fun NATO facts. Oh, he plays the accordion.
This is true. I feel like I have to say things about Mike, otherwise he's going to keep saying things about me.
100% true.
Mike has never worn a collared shirt.
That's not true.
Until
Funerals and weddings.
Right.
Right? Funerals and weddings. I'll put a collar on. I have a collar on now, but I want to say I didn't order these. This was forced upon me. I resent this deeply. Okay, I want to say that we have a quorum here. Let's go ahead and get started. So, guys, I earlier before, that was a very functional talk where I was basically describing sort of what's going to happen, where we're going, where the company is, how we got here, and I wanted to take a minute to give you guys a description of where we're going next, what's happening.
Vision.
What's the company's coming year looks like, and what is kind of like, what is the picture of where we're headed on like the 3-year, 4-year, 5-year time frame. We might even dip a little bit into like the really crazy megalomania stuff. And I have NATO up here to basically kick me in the shin when I start going off the plot a bit. Okay, let's do the next slide. Super easy slides. There's like, ooh.
There will certainly be no lack of human pioneers when we have mastered the art of flight. Who would have thought that navigation across the vast ocean is less dangerous and quieter than in the narrow, threatening gulfs of the Adriatic or the Baltic or the British Straits? Let us create vessels and sails adjusted to the heavenly ether, and there will be plenty of people unafraid of the empty wastes. In the meantime, we shall prepare for the brave sky travelers maps of the celestial bodies, I shall do it for the moon, you, Galileo, for Jupiter. Johannes Kepler, 1610, in correspondence to Galileo Galilei.
$16.10. These people of incredible foresight were thinking about, let's go ahead and try and make sure that in the future, the people who are going to inevitably, for them it was inevitable, go out into space, have the information that they need so they can explore the stars, right? Kepler, Galileo talking to each other. Like this, for the record, I might have read it, but it came from him, right? NATO's the one who brought that to me.
I can't read it because I just break down.
Yeah, that's why I love you, big sweetie bean. It is an incredible and a beautiful sentiment, and I think that. So, I'm gonna steal this. Everything, either Kepler, etc. Like steal from the best. I proposed to my wife with a Shakespeare sonnet, right? 1492. What happened in 1492? 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Why do you know that? All right, so in 1492, if you were a European reading Euro Times, like nowhere in it would it have any note of some weaver's son tricking an Iberian monarch into giving him enough money to fuck off to nowhere, right? Nobody would have heard of him in that year. Lorenzo de' Medici died. A war that had been going on for 30 years between France and Spain ended. A whole lot of really important things happened. The reason why you know that in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue is because the civilization that you live in today fundamentally was enabled by that axis of history, right? When people look back at this time period, 200 years from now, 400 years from now, are they going to know what political party was in the White House? Are they going to know who came out on the top of the Syrian civil war? Are they going to know these things? Or are they going to know the things that we do now that fundamentally underpin the civilization that they live in then? That's what they're going to know. That's what they're going to see when they have the half page in their textbook, whatever the textbook is of that time. It'll probably be some brain engram. Yeah. Anyways, that mentions this decade of this part of the world. I hope that it's something like Longshot, or it's something like some of the other crazy startups that are around here that can actually have long-term impact in the world. Next slide. So the question of why. What we're trying to do is build a technology here that is going to allow people to go to space for orders of magnitude cheaper. We think there is a path to getting below $10 a kilogram here that doesn't involve unobtainium, that doesn't involve like building stuff out of Wolverine's claws, that is really just building the technology of the 1940s and the 1970s and building it big, building it really, really big. Finally, like the final bit of rant I'll give you on this question of why, which to me seems obvious, right? I think it is something that you are owed my explanation of this, so you can at least know where I'm coming from. But there are two paths that diverge in fundamentally our sphere of influence kind of cuts off at sort of like geostationary orbit. You can do telecommunication satellites because they make incredible amounts of money, but that's pretty much it. No asteroid mining, no colonies on moon, none of that stuff. That's a world that I think is sad for a number of reasons. It's sad because we're fundamentally out of frontiers. We're fundamentally out of reasons or places to go that are sort of new and distinct and challenging, and where you can do things fundamentally differently. In fact, you must do things fundamentally differently. I think that that's an increasingly resource-constrained humanity, and a humanity that kind of folds inward onto itself. You know, an interesting thing to think about is that my great-grandfather, who was an Irish peasant, whose English wasn't that great, if you compare him to a Welshman across the Irish Straits, and how different they were from each other, and you compare me today to a 40-year-old Chinese guy living in a tier 3 city in Szechuan, who has more in common with who? The Chinese guy and I have probably both seen Star Wars. We probably both play a lot of the same video games. We both know about germ theory. We have a whole bunch of things in common. We both have a tech startup. That's right. Like, my great-grandfather was Catholic. This other guy was probably Protestant. They might not have even been able to understand each other speaking. A whole bunch of things about them were fundamentally different, culturally, linguistically, the things that they would have known and thought about the world. Humanity is going through a period of really, really rapid and really awesome, like it has lots of benefits, homogenization, where the world is basically shrunk, right? There's nowhere that you can't go in effectively 18 hours. You can be anywhere on this planet. Language barriers are breaking down. You've got AI that can basically talk for you and communicate near perfectly. So interestingly enough, I'm a biologist by training. I'm an economist, bachelor's degree, master's degree is biology. And people are like, how does that matter? How does that matter? Well, here's a little thought for you. In evolutionary theory, the way that you get distinction, the way that you get diversity, the way that you get new things is that populations get separated by some event. Like, you're a lizard, a couple lizards, you're on a log gets caught by a storm, you get taken off to another island. That island's different than the one that you came from, you reproduce, you're now facing new conditions, and you have to change. Random variation over time with different conditions results in a completely different species. And these populations can then mix again, and that's where you get diversity from. Right now, we're in a process of basically harvesting kind of the corpus of human diversity, cultural, technological, political, and we're kind of getting closer and closer to one another. We're learning lessons from each other on a whole bunch of levels, and this is fundamentally a beautiful thing, but it makes me worry about the future. I think the only way that you have the room for human beings to get to build diversity, to build new fundamental ways of being human, is to go out, to go to new places where there are fundamentally different challenges to face, and where you're partially isolated. And I think that barring space, we might run out of that. And that leads to almost a monoculture, which is incredibly dangerous. But I don't want to focus on kind of the negative reasons for doing it. I also think that, I can't wait for humanity. I think that in 400 years, the people who are people then might not be recognizable to a person today. That there is a weirder, stranger, broader humanity, new cultures that we couldn't even conceive of, built on technology platforms that are just in their inception today, that could exist across the solar system. And I think that that's just a cooler future that I want my kids to have access to. That's an interesting place to be a human being. It's also a place where there is basically all the gold and rhenium and cadmium you can eat. It's too cheap to goddamn meter. Because the second you can actually get at the resources of the solar system, you can support a civilization of people living at an American standard of living of trillions of human beings. So forget about caring about stuff, right? That no longer is a problem. We're inherently provincial because we've always lived on Earth. This is everything that we know. This is everything that we have. It's everything we've always had. It's in the language. People say the whole wide world, when what they figuratively mean is the universe, right? We have to break out. We have to get out. It's not because the Earth is bad. It is because we have to protect it. And to the degree that we are going to get the cadmium, we're going to get the resources necessary to support our civilization, we will pick the bones of this planet clean before we stop. We're not going to stop. All those people living in India want what we have. They want a wealthy style of living. And who are we to deny them that? That's a dangerous thing for the world. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? There is that alternate future, that different path that we could take where we do get out, we crack the solar system open like an egg, we get at the good yolk in the middle, we eat that stuff up, and humanity is boundless and resource unlimited for an indefinite future. That's why. That's at least why for me. I think there are lots of great whys. That's mine. Okay, next slide. How? Look, these are a bunch of guys with some, well-painted sewer pipe in a shed in Oakland. How do we go from here to there? What is the credible stack where you can actually build a company that deploys some piece of infrastructure that can like completely overturn an existing industry and take the price of putting stuff into space and undercut it by orders of magnitude? How do you do it? Step one, you go from Mach 0 to Mach 5. That's hard. We've basically done that here in Oakland. That gun, if we packed that thing full of hydrogen, we could get one shot done, at least. It might blow up afterwards, but boy, that projectile is going to come out around Mach 6 or so. So that is a hypersonic 6-inch cannon out there. Box checked. The technology for these things, definitely more work to do on the big boys, but we know that we can do it. We need to scale right now. We're closing a $5 million venture capital round, and I'm also going to leverage a whole bunch of debt because unlike all those code slingers out there, I buy steel and capital equipment. That means I can get a mortgage. So, combination of debt, a combination of VC, and a good old Uncle Sam right up there. Look at him. For all of his neuroses and problems, boy, does that guy like spending money on things that go fast. So in the coming years, in our transition from going from Mach 5 to Mach 15, there is a whole lot of people inside of the Department of Defense who are really interested in those speeds. Right now, the way that the DoD tests like fancy scramjets, ramjets, stuff like that, is they take it to Holloman, they strap it to the most wily coyote piece of technology you have seen in the real world, which is a train track 20 kilometers long. They bolt a bunch of rockets to it, and they send it. And the Holloman test track, been around for like 55 years. It can go up to like Mach 8 if you literally lubricate the atmosphere with a couple $1 million of helium. It costs like $2 million to $6 million a pop to run. I think that little diorama that I have out there, the longer version of this system that's sitting in the yard out here, I'm going to be able to do that work, and I'm going to be able to do it a hell of a lot cheaper than Holloman. We're talking to some people at the Test Resource Management Center at the Pentagon, and I think that we're going to be able to make a case to them. How would you like that? The theme of shaving 2 orders of magnitude off of cost, you're going to see that's recurring in sort of my business propositions. I think we can do for the people at the Air Force and the people at the Navy who want to build stuff that goes really fast, we're going to make fast easy for those guys, and we're going to make it real cheap. That's what that system out there does. Now, am I doing that because I want to build hypersonic zoomy boomies for a living? No, my friends. I'm doing it because that is a way to give the DoD something they need while buying down all my technical risk for throwing stuff into space. They get something, I get something, everybody wins. So we get from Mach 5 to Mach 15. That happens in Nevada, and that's all DoD work, right? And I think, you can do hypersonic skeet shooting. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with a capability like that. And the reason why we're laying the thing down in Tonopah, which you can see on the diorama out there, is because we're right on the tippy tip, the very corner of Area 51, the Nevada National Security Site. And I am pointing my guns in to the Nevada National Security Site. So again, they want me to throw some hypersonic doodad into their airspace and then I don't know, I don't know what happened to it after that. It was up to them, right? They can do whatever spooky spook stuff they want to. I think there is a damn fine product in there for the DoD. Once you're at Mach 15, you have built a space gun. It's just not big enough. That's a problem. Where can you go big? You know, a fundamental problem with trying to put stuff into space from the United States is we got so many goddamn airplanes. If you want to actually shut down a big old section of sky, because, you might blow up a starship that turns into one of the sickest, rain of burning debris coming into the atmosphere. Awesome. I mean, okay, it's a catastrophe, but it looked great. Well, geez, guys, a lot of people got to get from Florida to New York or got to get from Chicago to LA. You're literally impinging on tens of thousands of people's lives, right? It's hard. The United States is one of the densest air markets ever. You got to go somewhere where you have open airspace and land that's so remote that you could detonate an atomic bomb and nobody would notice. Where can you find that? Australia is where you can find that. So I think that you basically go from Mach 0 to Mach 5, venture capital backed. That happens in Oakland. From Mach 5 to Mach 15 is a combination of DoD, venture capital, and debt. That's how we get there. And that gets us to good revenue, building a thing for the Department of Defense that they need. From Mach 15 to Mach 25, it's a very similar mix. You're looking at a combination of venture, you're looking at a combination of debt, and at that point, Longshot's no longer some weird technology play. It's an infrastructure company at that point, right? It looks very different from a financing standpoint, and that gives you the money that you need to build up, right? So you're able to deploy a system that is effectively looks a lot like this Mach 15 accelerator you've deployed in Nevada, except instead of being 2.5 kilometers long, you're looking at something that is 10, 15, 20 kilometers long. Tube, laying flat on the ground. Bump, 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 bump. Throw it. Vehicle comes out, hits the atmosphere. It's traveling parallel to the surface of the Earth, but it's a wave rider. It's actually shaped so that it generates hypersonic lift. You ascend, and off you go. Building something that big is hard. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of capital. But it's also the case that we've been very careful to design this system such that it's built out of mild steel and concrete. If you tried to build a space gun short, it would be energy dense. You'd have to make it out of Inconel, and a lot of it. It would be if you ever look at a conventional artillery system, these are energy-dense systems. The base of that tube might be 3-inch, 6-inch thick steel to hold all that pressure and temperature in. That gun out there is sewer pipe, and that's all we are ever going to be working in. Mild steel and sex appeal, ladies and gentlemen, all right? Building a 10-kilometer long space gun, a 20-kilometer long space gun, is crazy. Building a 20-kilometer long pipeline literally happens every goddamn day. So if you're going to build a space gun, you better turn it into a pipeline. And that's what we're doing. Longshot is a civil engineering company that has somehow slipped in, disguised as an aerospace engineering company. And I think if you walk around here, you'll get the vibe of that. So that's how we go from here to there. The work that we're going to be doing in the next few years is going to be very tightly focused on serving these DoD needs and building our technical capability up. You know, one of the reasons why DoD is going to be getting such a good deal from us is because, like, I don't want to profit maximize on them. I want to go to space. I want to go as fast as possible. To the degree the DoD helps me do that, I'm going to give them a great deal. They're going to get a great deal. Next slide. When? Never soon enough, in my opinion, all right? You know, I will actually say the last year, I think I wasted a lot of time. And I wasted a lot of time because the one thing that I've learned about doing this is, like, early on, I never had enough money, and so I kind of developed a taste for not having enough money. I got to break myself of that habit, NATO. I need all the money, right? I got to pour some gasoline on this fire. That's what we're going to be doing here. So I'm going to make sure that we're well capitalized from now until forever. That is my mission, baby. I think that from here to the system in Nevada that's going to Mach 15 might be like a 2.5-year project, something on those lines. So we do like a big Nevada system Mach 5, a year, maybe a year and a half, and then an additional year to scale that up to like Mach 15. I think it's going to be something on that order. A lot of that timeline hinges on what FAA tells us to do, because they have a lot to say about, like, do we have to do a NEPA review? What type of NEPA review do we do? What are they going to require from us to shut that airport down that we're building at? All that stuff. From there to space launch, I'll tell you, like, I'm going to start laying the groundwork with the Australian government as soon as possible to make something like this happen. I think there are some reasons to be optimistic. And I've been back and forth to Australia several times to talk to people who are in their Ministry of Defense and in their space program. Cool thing about Australia, space program, like 6 years old. They're a little bitty baby. That's pluripotent, guys. So they don't have any indigenous orbital space launch capability. So, like, it'd be kind of a cool big deal for them. Also, what I'm building is a gigantic piece of fixed infrastructure. It's like, hey, how would you like the Panama Canal of space access to be built in your country and nobody else's country? I'd take that deal. I'd take that deal if I were a country. So I think that that transition, it's more difficult for me to know what the timeline is there, but I would basically put another 3 years on. I think that if we were putting large payloads into space in 6 years, I'd be happy. I'd be happy. And I think from there, things start to get different. My ultimate goal for the price, like the actual cost that you charge people for putting stuff into space, is actually zero. I think that the cost of putting stuff into space should be zero. The way that you make money is by basically, like, imagine this. You, sir, right there. You are the owner of a aerospace startup, and what you do is you build satellites that grab other people's satellites and take them where they need to be. If I put your company to the top of the list, and I gave you free access to space, you never paid me a dime, and I've got so much capacity, I'm going to throw anything you can give me to space as fast as you can give it to me. What happens to the value of your company? I think the value of your company goes way up. I think you crush everybody and your competitors. All of a sudden, you have free access to space, and they have to pay Elon for it. So why don't you just give me some equity for that? I think that there's basically a deal to be worked out, right? Where we work together. We build the infrastructure to build stuff in space. I got the space gun solved. Now we're talking about the infrastructure layer. Then we talk about the communications layer, power. After you solve launch, what is the next most expensive thing in space? This is the long-term megalomania version of it. I want it to be as expensive. Like, if you want to airmail something from Australia to Germany, I would like it to be in that order of cost to send something to the surface of the moon, right? I want that to be solved, because I think that's the barrier that we fundamentally have to break down to get to that more interesting and more distant future. Sorry, now I'm officially going crazy. I'll stop at this point. You should have kicked me earlier. Next slide, please. If you think that's too slow, guys, I encourage you to reach out. You can talk about working at Longshot. You can also talk about investing. I'm going to do a Q&A right now. Anybody who has any questions, you're free to ask them of me and my esteemed, somewhat quiet colleague up here. It's kind of a Penn and Teller routine, right? That's it. Thanks so much for coming out, guys. It really does buoy me. It really is great to have folks come out and offer their support. Thank you guys very much. Hey, Gus, can you turn the lights on? Okay, so questions. I'm going to basically stay up here for probably half an hour. After that, I'm going to go back into my office, and anybody who wants to talk about giving Longshot money, follow me. That's where you should come. But what do you want to know? Me, NATO, anybody? Oh, and we'll give prizes for questions too. If you want a Longshot shirt or a Longshot hat, you just have to ask a question.
I was wondering what technical engineering challenge you're most excited about.
Oh. Oh boy, we have a few fun ones. I think there's a few projects that we've got going on right now that are pretty cool. Getting an instrumented projectile functional and surviving is an interesting challenge. We have fired some instrumented projectiles, and we have collected some data, but making that a really robust, reliable thing that we can do regularly. I think that's a fun engineering challenge. There's going to be some stuff around decelerating projectiles in fun ways, so that we can collect, so that we can fire gentler payloads or collect more interesting information. Like range design, I think is also sort of a fun thing that's out there. We have some exciting projects on the electrical side that I can't talk about. I don't know. There's also a bunch of stuff associated with barrel fabrication and maintenance. Like right now, we're doing a lot of stuff by hand, but if we are able to leverage a lot of debt, then it's really nice if we can use automation to solve those things rather than doing them by hand. And so automating barrel and booster fabrication would also be, I think, really cool, fun projects that would be coming down the pipe soon.
Who else? Okay.
Hey, two quick ones. One is, with the larger systems, the outdoor systems, is it going to just be the same sound like one big boom, or is the staged compression, what do you think it's going to sound like, and how far away will you have to be to not get wrecked? So the question one, the sound of the big systems, any projections? And question two, maybe you say a little something about your the location you're moving into, because it's an interesting thing, and you had that whole video about it, but then you didn't say a word.
Sorry about that. So in reverse order, the gun tube. Ooh, super cool. So at some point in the near future, I think, I invent a time machine, travel back in time, and trick the Navy into building a 300-foot-long concrete test cell for guns on Alameda. And then it gets shut down in the 90s, and now I'm going to rent it for 50 cents a square foot. Amazing. So that's got to happen in the near future, because there's no way that was random. It is the hand of God put that thing there, I swear. It's beautiful. It actually was used for testing the phalanx guns, so these gigantic Gatling guns and stuff, and it's this 300-foot-long concrete hallway that terminates, first it kind of narrows down to a pinch with steel plates, and you can see the pockmarks on the walls where bullets have skipped off of it, and then there's this massive steel bulkhead on the far side of it. And if I ever do fire something hard enough to blow through that, it's going to kill my wife, because it's pointed almost dead at Ames. Like, it's down in Mountain View if you just keep dry on a straight line. So don't do that, Mike. Don't do that. Your other question was about the noise of the system. I think that as the system gets longer and there are more and more injectors, there's going to be kind of a zip and then a boom, right? So when you're talking about a space launch system, the actual acceleration is happening almost over the course of 2 seconds. So I really want to put LEDs on the whole system so you can actually visually see from a tower basically the entire thing, and then a vehicle hit the atmosphere. And when a vehicle hits the atmosphere, of course, it'll be incandescently hot immediately. So we have to do these shots at night, right? And you'll see them during the day. Put a little bit of copper in there so that it's nice and green. You make it look like a green from the Death Star. Oh, yes. So I think the Death Star 1 was blue and the second one was green. Okay, anyways. In terms of noise on the ground, I actually think that when we're going for space launch, by far, it's the sonic boom of the vehicle traveling. That's where the noise is coming from. The noise of the gun, be 1,000 feet away, you're going to be fine. Like, it'll sound like it'll be loud. I don't actually think it'll be that much louder than that. Maybe like, decibels logarithmic, but I would guess, another factor of 10 louder than that. And again, I think if you're 1,000 feet away, it's not that big of a deal. Now, if you're talking about a 2-ton, a 4-ton, a 40-ton vehicle traveling through the Earth's lower atmosphere at Mach forgive me Jesus, Mach 25, it's going to be quite the sonic boom. If you thought the Concorde was loud, why do you get a load of me? That's going to be something else. I have told people, and I think I said this, you should be somewhere where you could detonate an atomic bomb and nobody would notice. So that's the noise that you might be generating, and that's why I think you need like a continent like Australia to do this.
Yeah, but you'll have all kinds of infrastructure built up around it by the time you're doing daily, hourly launch.
Absolutely. But again, that's the cool. The gun itself is a standoff for this, though, right? If your infrastructure is towards the base of the system and your accelerator is 20 kilometers long, that's pretty far away. You're going to be fine. And I think that there are plenty of places in the interior of Australia where you can be 75 kilometers away from the next living human being easily. Okay, you can crayon. Who's got another one? That guy back there, go.
So I think you briefly said when you exit the cannon, the vehicle will actually generate lift. Is that
correct?
Can you elaborate on that? And is that more efficient than canting the gun at an angle?
Yeah, so we've done a bunch of modeling. The canting the gun at an angle is a colossal pain in the ass. The main reason, Right. I think one of the main reasons is, so I will say, it is entirely possible that our second or third space launch guns might be canted at an angle. The first one will almost certainly not be canted at an angle because when we build it, there will still be some uncertainty about how long it will have to be. We're going to build it, and we're going to build it the way that we think it'll work, and then it'll turn out that we underestimated, and we have to make it a little bit longer, add another like 300 meters of boosters. And so if we're at an angle, that will be very hard to do, extending it, further out, cantilevered over the land. The second or third guns will have a better handle on exact performance metrics, and we'll have better modeling, and et cetera. And so we'll be able to predict, we're going to design this thing to run exactly this long. As far as hypersonic lift is concerned, it might be the case that we can just exit the barrel with a purely axisymmetric conical projectile and just have it tilted at a slight angle and use the basically selective ablation of the heat shield to keep it oriented in the way that we want it to be, to keep it ascending. We can dope the heat shield so that parts of it ablate away faster and other parts stay intact longer. And so we can use things like that to adjust the geometry of the projectile as it flies to make it go places.
There's fundamentally a trade-off between length and whoop. If you want to go whoop, you're not building a 10-kilometer long gun. There's no mountain on Earth with a 2-kilometer long flat face. That doesn't exist. So how cool is a 25-kilometer gun versus how cool is a gun at a 45-degree angle? If the longest I can build a gun at a 45-degree angle is half a kilometer, that's lame and small, and I hate it. And also, there are a lot of scaling laws here that run on the side of bigger. So you're fundamentally, even if you decide I'm going to dig the biggest hole in the world going one way, and I'm going to build the largest man-made structure in the world going this way, you've now taken your space gun project and you have multiplied it by it's probably a factor of 100 more expensive now, because you're also building the largest skyscraper in the world and the deepest borehole in the world at the same time. Forget it, right? So flat on the ground allows you to scale to throwing a size of projectile where the Earth's atmosphere no longer matters. And that is a size. There's a size of projectile where it's just like, who cares?
We've talked about the size of the gun systems that we're going to build. Internally we call them Baby Bear, Mama Bear, and Papa Bear. And so Baby Bear is our first gun system that would be usable for space launch. That's firing a approximately 3,000 kilogram projectile that has about 500 kilograms of payload, and yeah, is something like 15 kilometers long, and that's like a 2-meter diameter cannon. Mama Bear is like a 5-meter diameter cannon that's like 20-something kilometers long, and that's firing a 40,000 kilogram shipping container into orbit. And there's more. And so so from a cost perspective, the first gun that we described, Baby Bear, cost per kilogram starts around $300 or $400 a kilogram, and then as we implement things like hydrogen recapture and a bunch of other efficiencies, we get that down into the neighborhood of $100, $150 a kilogram. Mama Bear, when we scale it up, that lets us start off somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 a kilogram and go down from there. And then there's Papa Bear, where I don't trust my modeling, but Papa Bear, it's about 35 kilometers long, 10 meters diameter. So we're firing a projectile the size of Starship that carries a payload of 800,000 kilograms, and we start off around $10 a kilogram and go down from there. But like I say, this is like, just keep extending the dotted lines on your extrapolations, and that's where they go. So, we'll see what actually happens.
I do want to say that, I think that you could do $10 a kilogram or very close to it in Mama Bear, which I think is it's a industrial engineering project, the likes of building a large bridge. in terms of like the capital outlay and how hard it is. Papa Bear is a little something else, but I do think that with Papa Bear, you're like, I mean, you know, we could move to New Jersey. We could move to Europa. What do you want to do? Like, it really is a fundamental difference in the human relationship to the wider solar system. More questions? Who's got the microphone? Oh, right there.
So when this thing gets into space, does it navigate? You're going to catch it with a big fish net?
I like the idea of catching it in space, but I think that is a long-term optimization. You do have to have a circularization burn in orbit. So basically, vehicle goes up. If you're just kinetic, it's going to come right back to where it launched from. So you go up, you hit your apogee, you burn a little bit, and that circularizes your orbit. You're now in orbit. So you do have to have some in there. But fundamentally, I think that the way that you get from, like, rockets solve the problem both of getting out of the Earth's atmosphere and navigating once you're in space. And like any engineer will tell you that when you take two very distinct technical problems and you make them mutually dependent, you don't make things twice as difficult, you make things many, many, many times more difficult. Longshot is building a tool for getting stuff out of the Earth's atmosphere. Other people are building tools for navigating in space. And if you make these things non-dependent on each other, you make both problems a lot easier. So I think get to space and use a space tug that's optimized for moving around in space to deliver your satellites where they're going to go.
That's fine. I was just going to say for the technical people in the audience that the trajectory modeling indicates that we only need about 100 meters per second of delta V to circularize the orbit. So that's a small enough amount of delta V that you can do it with like a cold gas thruster or a small solid, something like that.
Just a question. Could you do this at sea? And like, if you did it at sea, like, could you get around a lot of the regulatory hurdles? Because you wouldn't have to deal with
John
any
here?
kind of government.
Is John? I think John already left, but John Hunter was here. John Hunter he ran a company called Quick Launch, and in 2009 he gave a talk at Google called "Cannons to the Planets," which you can find online. I totally recommend, and that's what gave me the kinetic launch brainworm. And he pitched a kilometer-long light gas gun suspended underneath an oil derrick, and you could take it out, and you could point it any direction you want, and you could tow it to the equator, and it'd be awesome. Problem is, the ocean's trying to kill you all the time if you're made out of metal. And the second you take, like, if you look at the difference in maintenance costs between a boat and a car wins. Like, the ocean is awful for machines. So, like, I think that we're trying to do this surface-laid pipeline in the absolutely lowest capital upfront way of doing it. And I think that that kind of like tow it out to the middle of the ocean, I think that you might get around some regulatory problems. I also think that if you were like, I suspect that if you got close, fundamentally a problem with anything that what goes up must come down is kind of the way that most national governments think about it. Like, are we going to let these fucking weirdo libertarians go out to the middle of the ocean and build an intercontinental ballistic space gun? No, we are not. They'd find a way. Okay? So you're not getting around that. Like, work with national governments. So I don't think that you necessarily solve your regulatory problem. I also think that the ocean is an awful beast attempting to eat all your metal. So I think that fundamentally it makes things actually much more expensive in an unnecessary way. We had a bunch of hands over here.
Hello? Oh, okay. A bit of a technical question. How serious are you about the no inclination thing? Because I just ran some quick calculations upstairs, and like if you're talking about like a 20-kilometer long tube running along the ground, right? Like at some point in that tube, you want to hit like Mach 15, and at that point, you're going like 5,000 meters per second. You run through 5 kilometers of that tube, and that 5 kilometers is the same, like, that's dropping below the horizon line. So I don't know what kind of railing you're thinking about, but like, I mean, do you really want to run flat against the ground, like under those circumstances? Like, you start to deal with particle accelerator problems.
Yeah, we might be like excavating in the middle and supporting slightly at the ends.
Yeah.
But we're, you know, the goal is to make it straight.
Okay. Okay.
Not, you know, with not intentionally building in some extreme angle.
At that scale, local topology dominates. So the curvature of the Earth at like 20, 30 kilometers, its local hills and everything are going to way outweigh that in terms of how much Earth you have to move to get a straight line.
Okay.
Hi, all. So my question is, you mentioned payload a little bit ago, and there's definitely better and worse payload types for this sort of thing. It's not going to be humans. And so I wonder what sort of payloads you're most excited about for that first commercialization. And I'm just like, the first thing that came to my mind is like, can you just fire up methane? But like, what comes to your guys' mind?
I think a bag of potatoes would actually be like an incredibly appropriate first payload.
Yeah, I think the things I think that we can do, commercial satellites. I think I'm excited about just serving the satellite market. There is going to be a bunch of raw material stuff, putting up, fuel and stuff. There's a lot of people who've talked about, fuel storage in space, fuel depots in space. I also think there's stuff around space-based solar power. We just throw up a whole bunch of flat pack solar panels. I think those things will be like easy early wins.
I think that as launch gets cheaper, we've seen this change in architectures of space systems where you're moving to like these highly proliferated constellations, and that clearly tracks the economics of launch. I think that as launch basically becomes free, like maybe you make your satellites super high ballistic coefficient, and then you're like, we're gonna launch this thing to like 120 kilometer orbit, and it's gonna last like 4 days, and that's fine. People are going to be able to play amazing video games with how low the latency is on this bad boy, right? Because this is really close to the surface of the Earth, and you're straight up beating fiber at that point. So I think that like when you think about putting stuff into space as super cheap, like people have literally been doing the math on kind of like space-based solar power since the 50s, right? And they're like, geez, if it was just cheaper than like $300, $200 a kilogram, this would make tons of sense. So I do think there are a whole bunch of kind of latent wins, people working on these ideas, which are fundamentally kind of marginal in the world that we're in, and I want those people to succeed in enormous ways, right? So there are a bunch of startups, like one of our, we're kind of a cousin company. We have a shared investor with Reflect Orbital. They're putting mirrors in space to beam light down onto solar facilities. I think that's dope. I want to launch a bunch of Mylar. Mylar's going to do fine at like 400 Gs. That's not going to mind. Oh, live stream questions. That's right. We forgot about the live stream. Okay. Hey, would somebody run the microphone up to Lawrence so he could read a couple off for us?
The question was basically talking about G-forces. So just talk about the G-loads and how that affects the customer.
Sure. So the scaling of the gun is basically 2 set G-loads at some level. So we have we deliberately make it ridiculously long to keep the G-forces low. In this case, low means in the neighborhood of average of 200 to 300 Gs for a space launch system. For context, your phone when you drop it from like hip height onto concrete experiences 200 or 300 Gs. If you drop it from your shoulder, you're like 800 Gs. So these are the kinds of G-loads that consumer electronics are designed to survive and can survive. Most satellites are not natively designed to take those types of loads, but if your options are add some gussets and increase your mass by 10% so that you can survive a 300 G launch, or pay 10 times as much to another person, you're probably going to just add some gussets and maybe make some of your parts out of steel instead of aluminum.
I also want to say, like, when you get really crazy with it, you might be able to pump up to, like, if you're talking about a 30-kilometer long system or a 35-kilometer long system, then you're getting your G-forces down to like 200, below 200 at that point. At that point, by the way, a hamster is going to make it. Like, yeah, like the smaller the animal is, the less mass it has to crush itself with. If you, like, this is why you can, like, a cat is kind of on the threshold of like it can fall from terminal velocity and survive. A hamster, it's good to go. Its ballistic coefficient is too low, so it's good. But like, it's also about mass, right? It doesn't have enough mass with which to crush its own organs. So I bet you, I'm not going to, I promise, but I bet you could put a hamster in this thing, and it's gonna be just fine. That's gonna be Space Hamster. Okay. That was the moment to kick me. That was the moment to kick me. All right, do we have any more questions from the live stream? Okay, great. I've got to go talk to investors. I'm going to throw NATO to the wolves here and let him talk to you guys. Thank you so much for your questions.
All right, any other questions for the introvert? No, seeing none? Okay, I guess we're done. All right. No, seriously, happy to talk, or or we can shut it down if we don't have anything else. shoot the gun again. Yeah, all right. It'll just take us another 3 hours to torque all those bolts. I know. Okay, well, thanks for coming, folks. It's been a blast.